So, in that last video when I said I had 8 competition entries for 2024, I lied. I actually have 9. This is the ninth. Hold on, where's the key? This is actually the Kibo 6 competition. It's the 6th annual Kibo Organics competition. It ran from December 20th, 2024 to January 12th, 2025. And it is by far the biggest piece of Minecraft I've ever bitten off and attempted to chew. Oh, and behind me, that's all the asset plots. Um, I'm a bit of a hoarder, so I don't really delete anything. So, yeah, there's the prototype floor. Here are all the fish designs and whatever. I'm not even going to bother loading that in. It's full, too. I'm terrible at doing this. But yeah, this was for my entry for the 6th annual Kibo Organics competition. It is by far the largest competition that I have ever entered. There is a fancy big prize of $3,000 for builds that score high enough. And then first place is $1.5 grand. It is quite significant, and it is quite the time investment. This is by far the largest plot I've used. This is 351 by 351 blocks, and I think this is the biggest single thing I've ever built. So what's the deal with the big fish then? Well, to explain that, I have to explain the theme. You see, this is hosted every year on Builder's Refuge, and every year for the last 6 years, and every time there's a theme, and this year's theme was sensation. The idea here was that you were to represent one or more sensations in a build, be it touch, taste, seeing, hearing. Man, as soon as the recording software starts going, I forget what senses there are. And have that, tell your story. And I think the organizers of the competition kind of realized that, as things become more abstract, you kind of enter the realm of ambiguity, and so they provided us with the opportunity to make an artist statement. And I think this is the first time I've ever made an artist statement on a build I've made in Minecraft, unless you count my YouTube channel, and in that case then I'm pretty familiar with it. So I think to clarify some things, instead of trying to stammer through explanation after explanation, I'll just read mine to you now. Alright, so the build is called Making a Meltdown. Sensation betrays everyone sometimes. Too little or too much in the wrong places or wrong times will cascade over the walls of your patience and shatter your place in the world. Overstimulation begets a loss of control that can join separate senses and rips others apart. When the din of many voices makes understanding them an afterthought, when the flickering lights in a room blind you to the faces within, when a loose clothing tag turns a t-shirt into a spiked casket. When sensation becomes the enemy, flush with spines of malice and colors of ecstasy, it threatens to swallow you whole. Your mind may curl like a scared kitty, too lost and too small to make a difference in the roaring world. So you accept this shred of identity and face the noise. Now, there's more to my artist statement than that. That's sort of like the big descriptor. They also ask to include your thought process and building process and a bunch of references and stuff. But I think that just about summarizes my ideas behind the build. Now let me show you some of the techniques I used. I've set the time to night because the first thing I want you to notice is that the fishy is still lit up. I covered him in light blocks. I actually used replace commands to replace against adjacent blocks with different light levels. So for example, this yellow glass has a really high light level versus, say, the orange sandstone has a really low light level to kind of accentuate the gradients that I used. And this is completely all over the fish. So really bright highlighty spots, I colored really, really bright, and so on. And this is to, one, make it look really cool at night, and so I can have, like I said, things accentuated even more, like this face in here and the eyeball tentacles coming out from the gills. And two, it's because if I go to night vision, it gives them a really interesting neon effect. And, to contrast the dark kitty here that you're supposed to sort of be the point of view of. I'm doing a really poor job of explaining this, but whatever. I don't want to edit a massive video, so this is what you're getting. And yeah, that was sort of the main focus. That's the main feature of the build, aside from the size. Everything else is kind of everything else is an attempt to support that, including the floor, which shatters as the fish, I assume, falls from above. And so the idea here is that the floor is supposed to be like a lake or a frozen river or something that the kitty is standing on. You know, river of the mind. It's not supposed to be literal or anything. And then the fish is kaboom, shattering it, and the kitty's like, oh no, he's gonna eat me, ah. And, yeah. But the problem was, I left this until the very last day. And so this is what I got. It's kind of an egg. I don't really like it. I think it would have been better if I had just let the shattered pieces, you know, exist in their full shape and just cut them off at that and make that the boundary instead of trying to smooth it. Because it's really quite, I don't know, it's a bit distracting kind of how awkward the edge is. I just drew a line by hand. Whatever, you know. There are always things that you think you can do better in retrospect. Anyway, one of the most significant developments of my building skills during this time is that I learned how to use the Axiom editor for this project. So that's the thing that kind of looks like Blender, and you go in and you can, you know, use shapes and stuff and do things really, really fast and efficiently. And of course, I'm kicking myself for not learning it sooner because it is awesome. The shape tool in particular is what allowed me to make this fish. So let me actually go over to one of my other plots, my asset plot that I said I wasn't going to show you. I'll just cut to when it's loaded in. And you can see the way I kind of made the fish out of shapes. So this was sort of a scale model, and I scaled it up and smoothed it and everything and reshaped some things that needed attention. But this is the original. And it's made up of just a bunch of shapes that I hand smoothed. So for example, this dark blue is cylinders. I believe these here, these spikes are cones, and then the yellow spikes are also cones. And then there's a shape called the supersphere, which is a sphere that you can kind of give squareness, if that makes sense, with an exponent. And that's what I used to cut out the shape of the mouth. And I use the same process for the cat. So this is the original framework that I made by hand, and then I scaled it up by 2, and then I used the shape tool to block out the rough outline of what I think a cat looks like, using references, of course. And then, if I fly all the way up here, I smoothed that. Oh, shoot. Here it is. I smoothed that, and then I scaled it up again and smoothed it again because I thought that was too small. And after that, it was just a matter of going through iterations and coloring it and giving him little fur spikes on the back and everything else. So there are 2 more things that I want to bring attention to before I move on, and they are both in the eyeball. So the eyeball is an interesting technique because I used light blocks inside, and then I covered it all in tinted glass so the light doesn't actually leak out. So the effect, if I go back to nighttime, is that the eye itself is bright, but the outside exterior part is not. The second thing I wanted to point out is the interesting way that colors behave when you look at them from really far away. So I used bedrock here, and bedrock is actually kind of weird because it's almost bluish, but you don't really see that from up close until you go way far away, and you get that purpley blue at the bottom of the eye. It's a really neat effect, and I only discovered that by accident. I actually used bedrock as a placeholder for something else, and then I thought, wow, okay, bedrock looks all right. There you go. In fact, I think that you can say is a running theme in this build. A lot of it was trial and error and thinking, oh, well, I don't know about that, but may as well try it. And surprisingly, a lot of weird things worked. For example, emerald blocks. They are an extremely unique shade of green, and they worked perfectly for the edges of the spikes. Unfortunately, there are no green slabs, so I had to use, well, no proper green slabs. I don't really count mossy stone or mossy cobblestone because they're not, you know, great. I used grass in a mushroom biome, and it's for that bright green. It kind of works. Not really up close, but luckily we're not looking at this up close. Now, speaking of not looking at things up close, I think that's a nice segue to representing the actual scale of these things. So I'm going to set my speed to the default Minecraft fly speed, and we're going to see how long it takes me to do an orbit of the fish. All right, here we go. This is fly speed. This is sprint fly. This is when you press control and you fly. I'm not gonna make you wait, but yeah, that's the idea. I think that more than anything helped me understand how huge these things are and why they're such a time sink. Because you look at this and you're thinking, oh, I'll do the spikes, you know, in an hour or so. I think the spikes in total took me 2 days. Just, you know, positioning them, getting them smoothed, making sure the color is okay. Everything on a bigger scale takes longer than you think. And that is quite the lesson I had to learn time and time again and suffer from and, you know, potentially lose out on because, of course, like I said before, I left a lot of important things till last minute because I thought, oh, it'll just take me a couple hours. No. Okay, I want to look at some of my friends' entries now. This is WeepinqAngel's entry. You might remember her from the competitions video. I've done quite a few collaborations with her, actually. And yeah, her sort of theme is, let's see what she wrote here. Generally, it's just a depiction of intense pain in non-human form. And that's where she went. It's quite gruesome. I love it. And the most outstanding part of this is that she did it in 4.5 days. One of the things that I think WeepinqAngel does best is create and replicate feelings of desolation and decay, either in more direct forms like this or in her architecture. But this build specifically feels alive, despite being obviously dead, because you can almost hear it decaying in front of you. This is my friend Whirdle's entry. You might also remember Whirdle from my competitions video. He was the other person I collaborated with that year. And yeah, he finished this in the first week of the competition and then came back in the last couple days and did these music notes and stuff up here. Anyway, he calls this build Representation of a Melodic Transcendence. And he says this build is meant to convey the transcendent ecstasy music can evoke, how a listening experience can transport you to a profound state of liberation. Pretty neat stuff. And if you look closely, this texturing is pretty wild as well. Uses command blocks, of all things, I guess, to make the connection between prismarine and clay, both of which are very blue textures. There's a lot of stuff to love here in this build, be it, you know, the fabric, how delicately it's colored, or the fact that this is an actual record. I don't know what it is. Maybe you can identify it, though, but I know it is a specific one because he talked about it. I just don't remember. And check out the music staff. It's Redstone Dust. Again, wild. This is NotSumNerd's entry. I know that sounds mean, but that's his name. And if I bit off more than I can chew, then some took, I don't know, the whole cake. It's just incredible how much Sum was able to fit into this plot. And not all this detail is central, too. This whole head that he modeled using glass and tinted glass, which my computer is struggling to render at the moment, is just a background detail to the main focus of the man in the hallway. As compositionally focused as this build is, it's also quite thematically focused as well. We can tell exactly what's going on here because this man his actions are reflected in the world around him. As he touches things, they become lighter, as if he is experiencing them again for the first time. The build's title, Forget-Me-Not, seems to indicate that this, in fact, is his remaining contact with the world, and I think the context of the scene agrees. Sum won this contest in 2022, and I have to say I'm not surprised he did. Look at the deliberate placement on this face here. It's quite marvelous, especially because it looks so nonsensical up close until you know, retreat a little bit and realize that everything has a unique purpose in there. Finally, this is Snarple's build. Now, Snarple and I both came into this contest not experienced at all with large-scale organics, and so we both kind of had an uphill battle here, and I really enjoy the difference in our approaches. Snarple went straight for human shapes, human features, and human, you know, fabric and clothing and situations and stuff, and I decided that I wasn't going to be able to do that, and so I took what I thought was the easier route and made something abstract. So with that respect, I really have to respect Snarple for doing this because he pulled it off. When I asked Snarple what he wanted me to say about this build, he didn't really have anything in mind. However, I know from my conversations with him that he wanted to portray a fake sensation, a hologram, if you will. So a real visual sensation, but fake in other aspects where touch is concerned. Hence, you know, the missing bond between the two hands. Enough about the themes, though. I want to explore a little bit of the detail, and I think one of my favorite parts of this build is the girl's hair. Snarple, again, not known for organics, decided to go and build a full human. He originally said he didn't want to do hands, but he did the girl's hands anyway, and I think the risks he took definitely paid off. This build is something else. Now, believe it or not, but I have more than 4 friends, more than 4 that enter this competition too, and I would love to show you every build here, but to be honest, I would be here for hours and hours and hours, and I don't want to be here for hours and hours and hours, so I thought I'd just show you the 4 that I intertwined most closely with during the competition. You know, when you get bored or want to procrastinate, you go and see your friends build, right? And that's what I did with these 4 here. And that's what they did with me. And so we got to share and swap a lot of ideas and advice. And I think that's really cool. And that definitely is what these competitions should be all about. You know, even if there's like huge sums of money on the line, it's really nice to collaborate, you know, but not really collaborate, because that's against the rules. If you want to check out some of these builds in person, the server at the moment of this recording is still up. If it's still up by the time the video goes out, I'll put the IP and the version in the description so you can have a look at some of these yourself. Speaking of at the moment, the judges are still judging, and so I don't have any scores to share. Not that I think those are the most important things to share in this video anyway. I already shared what's important to me, and I'm really proud of myself and my friends for doing what we did. So, yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you're really curious about the scores, I guess you can join the Builders Refuge Discord server and it will be posted eventually. Other than that, I don't know, something inspirational. Insert inspirational quote here. I got nothing. I'm going to bed. Good night.